Hello and welcome back to Mattday's Tottenham blog and to another live stream. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a review of the entire Premier League Matchday 2 that we saw over the weekend, culminating last night in the draw at Molineux. So I'm going to be going through all the games individually and obviously getting your questions and comments on board as well. And this is something I'm going to be doing on my channel for the next few weeks, but I'm hoping to eventually transfer it to my other channel, which I started the other day. I haven't had any videos on it yet. But it's going to be a Premier League channel rather than a Spurs one. So I'm going to leave the link to that in the description below if you want to go and check it out. This feature will be moving over there quite soon. Some of the few things I need to touch on as well. I'm going to be running my jersey giveaway again because the person who won the first one didn't claim the prize in time. So I'm going to be running that one again and I'll put up a video in the next couple of days. It's going to be a fairly similar thing, but you will have to enter it again if you do want to win the jersey. And as always, my Facebook group, which I'm running, my Spurs Facebook group, link will be down in the description below. And as well, the Fantasy Football League that I'm doing, again, for Spurs fans, link will be in the description down below. So for those watching on the live stream replay, what I'm going to do is, because I'm going to go through all the games individually, I'll put timestamps down in the description as to where we were talking about each game. So if you want to go down there and just click and you can skip to whatever game it is that you want to hear about. So I'm going to talk about the top six first and get those ones out of the way. Obviously a lot of news there. 4 of them actually dropped points over the weekend and the 2 who didn't are playing each other this weekend, so it's going to be very exciting to see how the top 6 kind of starts shaping out as the season progresses. I'm going to move on then to the rest of the teams in the league, the lesser ones. But yeah, I'm going to try and touch on every team that I can, and hopefully we'll get through as much of it as possible. So I am going to start with the Tottenham game from Saturday. I know I did a review the other day on it, but it was just such an exciting game, and we've seen a lot of debate over it. Mainly that VAR decision at the very end is what everyone is kind of most focused on. And I think the complaints that have been made about it, they're leaning more towards giving out about VAR rather than the actual decision for handball, which ultimately is where the problem is. I call it a problem, but the new decision that has been brought in about handball is that any handball, accidental or not, that leads to a goal or leads to a goal being prevented, it's going to be ruled out. And it's nothing to do with VAR. That, like, sure, the referee didn't see it, but it's not VAR that needs to be criticised for it, because ultimately it's the new rule that has affected it. I see Joshua Humphreys, Alan Harries, and Smasher Gaiman all joining the stream. Welcome along. But I think people are just getting too worked up about it, and I know it's easier to say that from a Tottenham point of view because we're the ones who've benefited from that decision, but it's very different to that one that we saw in the Champions League final. Welcome along, Aura Guardian, Paranormal Frank as well. Joshua was saying, don't see why people are meaning about the decision. It hit Laporte's arm, so it's handball, and that's just it. I know Ilkay Gundogan posted it on Twitter, a post that really kind of proved he doesn't really understand the rule at all, because he said something about if it hits the attacker's arm it's ruled out, but if it hits the defender's arm it doesn't matter. But that's not true at all. If that had hit Oliver Skipp's arm and prevented the goal, which in that situation it wouldn't have, but let's say it came to Gabriel Jesus and he tried to put it back across goal to Aguero standing free at the back post, or to Sterling, whoever, and it hit someone's arm accidentally, then a penalty would have been given. It's a rule that benefits both teams both ways, because they can't just do it one way. And people are saying it's this accidental handball decision, it's only in the penalty area really that it comes into effect, that there shouldn't be sort of things that only matter in a certain area of the pitch. But then you have to look at that penalty decision in the first half. Unfortunately, I do feel like City should have been given a penalty for that. It was a very, very clumsy challenge from Lamela, and I think anywhere else on the pitch outside of the box that would have been given, or if it was Rodri doing that to Lamela, as in the attacking team committing the foul, it would have been given. So we already have aspects in the game that it matters where on the pitch it is. And look, that's probably not the best thing to have, but it's just the way it works, because things matter more depending where it occurs on the pitch. So I think that kind of argument is it's kind of clutching at straws. But it's easy to see why City are so aggrieved. It's the second time it's happened them, but you just have to recognise that both of the decisions ultimately were correct. And it's a tough one for City to take, but this early on in the season, it's not the end of the world for them. Like, I'm sure they're still going to go on and win the league. Like, they just have so much more than anybody else, and that game showed the gulping class between City and apparently one of their nearest competitors. They they were just absolutely outstanding. And Kevin De Bruyne, for the majority of that game, was completely unplayable. And they didn't give us a chance. They absolutely did not give us a chance, which is what makes it just more amazing that we actually managed to get a point out of that game. But I think they need to start focusing on the fact that their £200+ million defence conceded 2 goals from 2 chances. I saw a thing like that on Twitter, rather than that one VAR decision, the correct decision that went against them. So there is a lot more things they need to address. Also, they missed so many chances. I know Lloris played a part in that, but Bernardo Silva had one in the second half where it was a really disappointing shot, 1-on-1 straight at Lloris. And they had a few other half opportunities that never really materialised for them. Paranormal Frank saying, I punched my door then, all of a sudden it happened again, VAR, at the same time as the Champions League game. It was bizarre. I remember saying it in my match preview that kind of looking at the recent history between the two teams, we couldn't really use that game as a marker for where the two teams are at, because we wouldn't see anything like that ever again. And kind of with the two teams, and all of a sudden the next game between them we saw it, and it's really bizarre, and it's kind of ironic that it did happen in the exact same way. And obviously I know the one last season did mean a lot more. It put us through the Champions League semi-final, and I know it was a tough one for City fans to take, but the way they reacted after the game, you know, they were starting fights outside the Premier League ground. I know Chris Cowlin, he was at the match, and he said it in his video yesterday that it wasn't just a handful, there was 50 or 60 City fans, and they were starting fights. There was women, there was older people, there was children around, and it was disgraceful the way they reacted to that. And obviously that has no place in the game at all. But you know, it's shocking that they did do that. But going back to the game, City can take a lot of positives from that, like a lot of positives, because for the 90 minutes they completely outplayed us and they made us look like an average team. And I know our performance was a bit disappointing, and you can kind of criticise some of our players for not being at their best, but at the end of the day, Manchester City made us look that bad. They just have so much quality in their side, and you only have to look at the bench that they had. Like, obviously they brought Gabriel Jesus on, but they had players like João Cancelo, Riyad Mahrez came off the bench, Phil Foden, David Silva as well. They have more than a starting 11. It was, as Jose Mourinho said last week on Sky Sports, there are 4 teams who can win the league, and 2 of them are Man City and the Man City B team. Their strength is absolutely sensational, and I think we have to kind of stray away from the performance and realise that we have just gone to the Etihad and got a point. I mean, the last 23 games that Manchester City have played, they've won 21 of them. They drew 1, which was that game on Saturday, and they lost 1, which was the game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in the quarter-final first leg last season. So you have to be really, really kind of proud of us that we can get those things off Man City. And like, the only competition that they played in last season and didn't win was the Champions League, and we're the ones who knocked them out of that. And Lee the Dorset Spur here in the stream, welcome Lee. Man City fans are so incensed about the result because they know we are one of the teams on the up who could cost them the title, even if it is by helping Liverpool. And that's really true. I suppose they would be a bit worried about us this season because we have strengthened a lot, and we were there in and around until maybe January last season. But I think we have, with strength in the team now this summer, we could actually be up there, and even if it is just by helping Liverpool. It was a really disappointing 2 points for them to lose in a game where they would feel that they did enough to get to 3 points, and maybe that's where their anger is coming from, and they are kind of trying to play it off as criticising VAR, but ultimately they dropped 2 points that they really shouldn't have dropped. And Tottenham probably dropped 2 points as well. Like, on paper we dropped 2 points, but that was a massive point to pick up. I think it was more important taking that 2 points off City, which is obviously great. Welcome along to the stream there, Tottenham Reese. Jay Spurs saying, where's Eriksen's future? They surely should have sorted it out by now. Well, just to get away from the matchday review for a second, Eriksen, we still really don't know where he is. Obviously had that brilliant performance against Aston Villa last week, and then kind of went back to his usual self against Manchester City. But I think it's just the most stupid thing ever that they have kind of shortened the Premier League window to end it before the season starts, whereas the European windows are still the same. The point of making that the Premier League window close sooner was so that at the start of the season you'd know who your squad was and there wouldn't be any chance of players leaving. But that's just completely been undone by the fact that UEFA haven't done it for Europe, and it was a really, really stupid decision from the Premier League, from the FA, from the Premier League managers who ultimately voted for it to do that. I know Pochettino was one of them who did vote for it. That should have been something that was done with UEFA and not by the FA. So it's really disappointing at the moment that players can still leave. And I know it's affecting United at the moment with Alexis Sanchez possibly going to Inter Milan, but it's a really bizarre decision. And I would hope that if UEFA don't do it for the whole of Europe next season, that the Premier League managers would try and get the Premier League window extended. And I know it may seem like a backward step bringing it back to 3 or 4 games into the season, But like if you look at our deal for Paulo Dybala this summer, if we had another couple of weeks, we would have got that done. Without a shadow of a doubt, that deal would have got done, because Inter Milan would have got their replacement, which is looking like Alexis Sanchez, and maybe even Romelu Lukaku would have been someone they wanted, but they just didn't have it wrapped up in time. That really does need to be fixed. Now, going back to the game, Paranormal Frank saying we did have a bit of possession in the first half for 10 minutes, then they scored the second, which slowed us down. And I did notice that when that Lamela goal went in completely against the run of play, all of a sudden we did look a lot kind of more comfortable in possession, and it was a better performance from us. But then just that one goal from City, it made it look so simple. And although there was a few aspects from us that we should have prevented it, it was just simple for City. Paranormal Frank, I can say it is workmen working next door. The Aura Guardian saying Poch didn't really want it, but Levy at the time thought it was a good idea to shorten the window. I didn't really know that, but it's just really stupid that it is the rest of the European teams they have an extra 3 or 4 weeks, and look, we can try and play the hard game and like up the price for our players and use that as an excuse maybe to get a bit more money because we can't replace them, but the main part to focus on there is we can't replace them, and that's just not good enough. That's definitely something that needs to be addressed. Jay Spurs saying, do you bench Eriksen against Newcastle so we get used to playing with him and play Celso more? I don't know. I think one of the 3 holding midfielders need to be benched against Newcastle, and this is something I'm saying a lot, and I know it seems to be that Pochettino just likes that diamond in midfield, and it mightn't have been a diamond in midfield against City, but there was no real formation there. It was all over the place, especially in the midfield. But I think one of those holding midfielders need to be dropped, just to revert to that 4-2-3-1 and see if it is that formation, the diamond, that is holding us back this season, or if it is like a matter of form and maybe they just haven't gotten started in the season yet. So I really do think we need to just go back to that 4-2-3-1. Maybe drop Sissoko, because he's probably been the more disappointing of the 3 in there. But it could be Harry Winks, because he's been taken off early in both games he played, and both of his replacements have gone on to change the game. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of position Winks is at in the team at the moment. But I certainly feel like we do need to drop one of those holding midfielders. But with Son coming back, and Lucas having that massive effect, and Lamela improving, and now Celso coming into the team, we could potentially see Eriksen getting dropped for different reasons. Jay Spurs saying, personally, I don't really like the idea of playing a player who's unsure about his future. And that was a question that was put to Pochettino, I think, when Vertonghen was left out of that Aston Villa squad. And he said that doesn't come into his thinking at all. He's looking at the players he has at his disposal, and their contract situation or their financial situation, their future, whatever it is, just doesn't really come into question. It's purely a football decision who's going to play. And obviously that has its benefits, but also has its drawbacks. And that is one of them. If a player who's unsure about his future, his mind might be elsewhere. And that's something we kind of thought was happening with Christian Eriksen throughout the duration of last season. And it did affect his performances. It wasn't his best season for goal scoring, assists, everything. It was just quite a disappointing season. But look, if he's the best player, and if what Pochettino is seeing in training is enough to prove to him that Eriksen should be in the starting 11, then Eriksen should be in the starting 11. I mean, we can say all we want about these different situations and performances in the league, but ultimately, like, Pochettino does have that better insight into what's going on, and training, of course, plays a massive part in who's been chosen for the games. But I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Eriksen starting. I would be terrified and shocked if we see him not in the squad at all, but I wouldn't be surprised if he starts the game on the bench. Tottenham Reece saying Lamela is reaching his peak. It has felt like that for 4 or 5 years now, but I think this is probably his last season. If he doesn't push on and become the player that we bought from Roma, that we were expecting him to be, I think he could be in his last season at Tottenham. But I really hope that he does perform well this season. That's another great option for us to have. Jay Spurs saying, do you think Arsenal is stronger than us in terms of attack? Well, I suppose getting on to that'd be a good way to get into the other games this weekend. Arsenal beat Burnley 2-1 on Saturday. It wasn't the most convincing performance. There was a few good performances from them, and Dani Ceballos was one of them. And Jay Spurs saying Aubameyang is class. I cannot lie. He is a fantastic player. Obviously, joint high scorer in the league last season. Arsenal, they were decent against Burnley, but I think it was strange to see from Burnley that they implemented a high press, which is something that we've never really seen from them before. It's not something Sean Dyche has ever really been known to do, but it was really effective for them. With the players they had up front, like Ashley Barnes especially, was doing really, really well. Dwight McNeil has went down the left, and Arsenal really struggled with it, but they got that goal early on. They had a few chances. The Burnley keeper, Nick Pope, made a few good saves. The goal that they did ultimately score was really, really scrappy, and it was one that definitely should have been prevented from a defensive point of view. with Lacazette kind of holding off 2 defenders from the corner, and then as he was falling, swivelling and playing it through the goalkeeper's legs. But Arsenal, for some of it, they did look good. Dani Ceballos in the centre of the park was completely unplayable for the bit of the game that I watched. I watched the majority of it, but he was completely unplayable, and I can see why Tottenham fans are kind of looking at that now and regretting that we have missed out on the chance to sign him. But like, I don't think it's a question of Lo Celso or Ceballos, but I think it's so much money to put into a player when you're only going to have him for a year, and there's no long term benefit from it. Like they did it with Denis Suarez last year, and that didn't work out with him at all. And they've gone and done it again with Dani Ceballos, paying £15 million for a season long loan, and I would imagine paying the majority of his wages. It's a really strange investment, and although it does look like it could have a really good kind of payback for them this season, I don't really see why they've done it. But look, he's a fantastic player, and when Burnley got back into the game, Ashley Barnes scored. It was a deflected shot from the edge of the box that ran into his path, and kind of Guendouzi and Leno were trying to put him off, and it was a decent finish into the bottom corner under pressure. But I think it changed the game for the rest of that second half. For the rest of the first half, Burnley really looked like they could push on and take the lead. They had a few chances from corners, and Arsenal looked really disjointed at the back, which is what we've kind of grown to expect from them. Steve Rufford saying about Ceballos, that's why we pulled out of it. We wanted to sign him at the end of the loan, which isn't something that Ceballos or Real Madrid were open to doing. But Burnley, for the rest of that first half, they really pushed on, and they were causing Arsenal a lot of problems. Again, it was that high press, which from Burnley is really, really strange to see, and I think maybe that is why it caught Arsenal off guard. Because usually what Burnley do, not just against the top 6, but in any game they play, where they're a bit under the cosh or something, they just park the bus. They put every man they can behind the ball and hope for the best. Which last season didn't work for them at all, but the season before that, when they finished 7th and qualified for the Europa League, was a really good achievement for them, and it showed it does work. But they were a bit unlucky in the end to lose the game. It was a really good goal from Aubameyang in the end that won it for Arsenal. And Arsenal had 100% record, but it was 2 really, really narrow victories against teams that you would expect to be in and around the lower part of the table this season. And Paranormal Frank saying Burnley, they are a good team, but they just don't have enough to kind of really compete against those bigger teams. And I know they beat us last season. That was through our really disappointing part of the season. Now, quickly, I see Mika Goring here saying, I think I heard the NBC commentators in the US say that Lo Celso was only in on a loan, not a permanent deal. Is that true? So essentially what the deal is, he has signed for us on loan initially. So he signed on a season-long loan with an obligation to buy at the end of this season. So basically what that did is, because of certain clauses in the Real Betis contract when they signed Giovanni Lo Celso from PSG, they had to pay 20%. They had to pay 20% of any profit they made on his sale back to PSG. So for us, we've signed him, I think, for £15 million on an initial loan deal, and then we'll sign him for £40 million next summer. So that means the profit they're making on the sale of Lo Celso is significantly less. So they have to pay less to PSG, which is where the benefit for Real Betis is. But for us, when that deal was agreed, it was kind of to help us hopefully pay that image rights deal to sign Dybala. So at the time, it was very beneficial for both teams. But at the moment, it's just worked out well for Real Betis. But it is a loan with an obligation to buy. So no matter what, he will be a Tottenham player permanently next summer. And Frank's saying Burnley are compact, and that is true. It's kind of the name they'd made for themselves in the Premier League. They're a team who are really difficult to break down. And I remember seeing a video, I can't remember who it was from, it was last year or the year before, and it was a really good kind of tactical analysis of how Burnley, how they did what they did in terms of making themselves so compact defensively without really having the personnel that would suggest they are a team who could do that. And I forget the kind of nitty gritty details of it, but basically they were just kind of funneling teams into the middle of the park and then just kind of overflowing the midfield and winning the ball back. And even when the teams were being funneled in, they were being forced into shots, but the way they were positioned, any shot on target would be straight at the keeper. And it was just a really, really interesting insight into the various different ways that you can actually, I suppose, make yourself a good defensive team. And something Sean Dyche has really, in the past, has really perfected at Burnley, and it's the reason they are still in the Premier League. Like the first few times he brought them up, they went straight back down, and they really struggled to hit any kind of form in the Premier League, not even just over the season, but short term, 3-4 games in a row. And it was essentially when they did qualify for the Europa League, it was that home form that did it for them. They, I think, only lost 3 or 4 games all season at Turf Moor, and it was against the likes of City. I think Arsenal won there, and I know Tottenham won there. But I think Sean Dyche, he's really close to really perfecting what he wants to do at Burnley, and I think he did do it that season. They finished 7th, but he's kind of struggling to get that going again. Tottenham till I die said, I'm going to the game this weekend, we should smash them really, and we should. Moving on to that Newcastle game, they lost 3-1 on Saturday to Norwich, and look, it was a good performance from Norwich, and Teemu Pukki scoring a hat-trick up front, and I see Thomas Gibbons here saying, what are your thoughts on Teemu Pukki? Do you think he's a brilliant player? I don't think yet he's at the level where we can say he's a brilliant player, but as for a signing for Norwich, they got on a free last summer. He scored 28 goals last season in the league alone, and now all of a sudden he's on 4 goals in the Premier League already, joint highest scorer. It's the dream start for any player moving into the Premier League, and getting that goal against Liverpool, I didn't really pay much attention to it because obviously, as I said, a player who did really, really well in the Championship, but he just didn't kind of seem like the player who could transfer that form to the Premier League. But that performance against Newcastle on Saturday, and it wasn't just the 3 chances that he had a few more chances, but the goals that he scored were really, really clever goals. Like that first one, it was kind of a cross that I think was headed out to the edge of the box or something, and he caught it on the volley so cleanly. It was an amazing volley from him, and it was a proper goal. It wasn't just a sloppy one that you'd expect those lower team strikers to score. It was a really good goal. And his second finish as well, coming in off the left, kind of gave the keeper the eyes, expecting him to curl it in the far corner, and he just cut it back across into the near post. And it was a really, really clever performance from Pukki. And look, he certainly deserved the 3 goals that he scored, and I'm sure it was a great moment for him. But looking at it from the other side, Newcastle, they look to be in big, big trouble at the moment. The 2 signings they've made, the big signings they've made over the last 12 or so months, Joelinton and Miguel Almiron, the 2 club record signings at this stage, there's absolutely no chemistry between them whatsoever. And look, you'd expect that. They've only played a couple of games together, but I don't see the point in Newcastle investing £40 million in a striker of Joelinton's kind of style when they do have Steve Bruce as a manager. It's absolutely ridiculous because Bruce, we all know, again, is one of those defensive managers, and Joelinton, he's the kind of player, you know, he's a big strong striker. He's not your typical Brazilian player, but he's the type of man that needs players around him. And with the squad Newcastle have, I think it would be fair to say that Almiron is the perfect player to have kind of playing as a number 10 behind Joelinton, because you know, play those long balls up. Joelinton will win every single one of them, but he needs players running off him, and they just don't have that. There was times in that game where Joelinton was 30-40 yards ahead of anyone else in that Newcastle team when he had possession or when he was trying to win a high ball. Your Guardian saying Newcastle's worst problem is Almiron, Joelinton and Saint Maximin have no support. They all try to carve out opportunities on their own, and that's true. Saint Maximin, it was a decent performance from him. I think against Arsenal in the first weekend. I didn't see much of him on Saturday, but it's really worrying for Newcastle, and for us really encouraging, because we can go into that game next Sunday, and let's try not to get complacent but be confident that we can go out and get a decent victory, maybe boost our goal difference a bit. But Newcastle look absolutely all over the place, and in the end it was a consolation goal through Jonjo Shelvey that they got. There was a good bit of footwork in the box and a decent finish, but it certainly wasn't enough to do anything about that performance from them against a promoted team like Norwich. Look, it was their first game back home in about 3 years playing in the Premier League, and there was always going to be that kind of start of the game, a boost for them, and they would start well, but they started well, and Newcastle just couldn't stop them. They were really, really good in that game, and you'd be extremely worried for Newcastle going into the season ahead. And like they made some good signings. Obviously brought in Joelinton and Saint Maximin. They also got Emil Kraft, I think he's a right back. But none of those signings seem to be Steve Bruce's signings. Even if you just look at the style of play of those players and Bruce, you question it straight away. But they were already in talks to sign Joelinton before Benitez left. I think it was the same with Saint Maximin. I'm not sure what the story with Emil Kraft is, but there's no point in going out and breaking your transfer record on a player who's just not going to benefit from the manager that's at the club. And I think that's where Newcastle fans, their complaints are at the moment, because it was always Mike Ashley isn't spending the money, and then when he went out and he sold Jose Perez and he didn't tie down a deal for Salomon Rondon, Newcastle fans were furious, and deservedly, and rightly so, because there was absolutely no potential there for Newcastle going into the season ahead. And I think Mike Ashley getting that deal done for Joelinton, £40 million is a lot of money for a player who hasn't proven himself at all. I think he only scored 7 goals last season, but it was a big investment, and I think it did appease the Newcastle fans for a bit until they realised, firstly, he wasn't Steve Bruce's signing, and secondly, he's not going to work out in a Steve Bruce team. And I can, without a shadow of a doubt, see Joelinton leaving next summer with Newcastle going down to the Championship. And even if Newcastle do somehow manage to stay up, I don't think Joelinton will stay, because it's not the type of team that he needs to play in, unless they do manage to get a different manager in. they're in massive trouble, and I'm looking forward to the game next Sunday because I really think we can see the likes of Lo Celso, Son, Eriksen, if he's playing, really show what they can do. And I think it will be a great game for Lo Celso to get into the first team for the first time. And I'm not sure we will see him start because it was only 5-10 minutes he got against Man City, but it was a really it's a really good time for him to get into that team and really show us what he can do. Paranormal Frank saying I'd like to see Lo Celso play a half of football. And Tottenham Till I Die asking about Andy Carroll. He won't be playing. He's still. I'm not sure if he has gotten back into full training. When he signed with Newcastle, he said he was in a good position because he started running outside again. Which look, it might be good in terms of his recovery, but it doesn't particularly paint a very positive picture of a player who's hoping to play Premier League football. So I don't think we will see Andy Carroll this weekend. But even if we did, I don't think it would make much of a difference. Newcastle are in a very, very worrying position, and I can't imagine they'll do anything, they'll show anything in the weekend. And look, I know they have been a bit of a bogey team for us in the past. I think we've beaten them our last 4 times we played them in the league, but before that they were a team who typically came to White Hart Lane and took points off us, and we struggled at the St James's Park as well, but I think it'll be comfortable this weekend. I see Pineapple Cousins and Thomas Gibbons here asking about the Wolves and United game. Pogba missed a pen. Do you think Ruben Neves is a baller? That was a really fascinating game last night between Wolves and United. I think it's kind of shown that United, they are ahead of where they were last season, but they're just not at the level they want to be just yet. They played well. They played really well in that first half. I was really impressed with Aaron Wan-Bissaka, both defensively and going forward. He just reads the game so well. And there were so many times in that first half where Wolves really looked like they were going to start to counter-attack, and Wan-Bissaka was in the perfect place at the right time to stop it and put United on the front foot again. The goal that they scored was a really good goal. It was some really good play from Lingard, Rashford and Martial. And the finish from Martial was absolutely exceptional. He was kind of running from the centre at the edge of the box back into the left channel. And as the ball was coming from behind him, he kind of swiveled and shot the ball into the roof of the net. No chance for Rui Patricio. But it was a really good finish from Martial. And I suppose from that stage, I know you kind of expect United to push on, but playing at Molineux last season when they were beaten 2-1, they did take an early lead. About 15 minutes in, Scott McTominay scored for them. And that kind of rejuvenated Wolves and helped them turn the game around. And it seemed to be the same thing last night. After that first goal for United, after dominating the majority of the opening part of the game, it really started to even out after that goal in a situation where you would expect United to try and cement their lead, kind of give a lot for 5 or 10 minutes to get that second goal while Wolves were a bit vulnerable. But they couldn't, and Wolves came back into the game 1-0 at half time. But going into that second half, Wolves, I think they brought on Adama Traore at half time. And for me, Traore is the type of player who he should be a lot better than he is. I think the attributes that he has would suggest that he should be a lot better than he is, but he just can't. He can't seem to find that. A bit like Lamela, I suppose. He can't seem to find that last thing that would make him the player that he really should be. But he did change the game a bit. His pace was really causing problems for Luke Shaw down that right hand side. And ultimately the goal that they got was an absolutely sensational goal from Ruben Neves. And just before it, they had actually hit the post. Raul Jimenez with a really good glancing header came off the inside of the post, and it was going back across the face of goal, and it hit De Gea, and it could have gone anywhere. But luckily for United, it went out for a corner. But the goal was coming. It was certainly deserved from Wolves. And then when they did get the goal, it was a corner from the right hand side. I think it was from the next phase of play after that header. And they took the corner short from the right hand side. It was given back to the corner taker, and everyone in the box started making these really good movements. They run to the near post, run to the back post, and it completely disjointed the United defence. They were all back in their 6-yard box, and the ball was pulled back to Ruben Neves at the edge of the box. And look, we all know how good Neves is from distance. I think the first 8 goals he actually scored for Wolves were all from outside of the box. And he controlled the ball, pushed it out onto his right foot, and he curled it absolutely amazingly in off the underside of the bar. Absolutely nothing David De Gea could do about it. It was an exceptional finish. And again, from then, you'd expect a response from United, which look, it came in some shape, but it wasn't kind of what you'd expect from them. Really pushing on, giving absolutely everything to win the game. They did get a penalty. The right call, in my opinion. It was a really, really sloppy challenge. And it gave United a good chance to go back in the lead and win the game, because it was pretty late in the day when they got that penalty. And this has caused a lot of debate. And I saw Gary Neville on Monday Night Football last night being really, really disappointed, and he was almost angry at the fact that Paul Pogba took the penalty. Now Marcus Rashford scored a penalty for United last week against Chelsea, the goal that put him in the lead, and of course scored that famous penalty against PSG last year. And he has kind of been their better penalty taker in the last 12 months or so. But Paul Pogba took the penalty last night, and it was saved by Rui Patricio. It was a good save from the keeper, but it was a disappointing penalty from Pogba. It was a really easy height for the keeper, and it wasn't exactly in the corner. So you can, I suppose, blame Pogba for missing it. But Gary Neville was given out after the game saying, that should be Marcus Rashford's penalty, and it shows a lack of leadership in the United team. It shows that there's a lack of chemistry, and all this kind of stupid stuff. And you can understand where he's coming from. But then when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Marcus Rashford in the post-game interview said it was okay, they both agreed with the decision. They're both designated penalty takers, and they kind of make the decision in the moment as to who's going to take the penalty. And I think that's fair enough. Like, if you have two players who can't take a penalty, switch it around between you. And that was, I think, Pogba's 4th missed penalty in the last year, which is a really disappointing stat, you have to admit. But if there's two players there who can't take penalties, and they both agreed in the moment that Pogba would take it, as Rashford said they did, I don't really understand why Gary Neville is getting frustrated. I think he's just trying to find things to be angry about at this stage. But it was disappointing for United that they did throw away the game like that. But it was a decent performance from United, and as I said, it shows they have kind of advanced since last season. But they're not really at the level they want to be yet, and I think they may struggle for top 4 this season. So I do think those first 3 places are really cemented with City, Liverpool and Tottenham. And looking at what we've seen from the first few games of the season, I think Arsenal could be the team that squeeze in there. But it's a really long season, and there's a lot of time for things to change. But I think Arsenal could be the team that would squeeze in there at the moment. I see an argument here about Pogba and the quality or lack thereof that he does possess. For me, he's a great player. He is. I don't think you can deny that he's a great player, because you have to kind of look at his performances when he was at Juventus and with the French national team in the last couple of years. But under his time with Mourinho at United, he was probably one of the worst players in that United team. One of the worst players that was consistently in the team, and there were a lot of people saying it was just the style of play that Mourinho was playing, the lack of relationship there with them. Just there was so many different factors kind of bringing down Pogba's performances, but it's continued under the first few weeks under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Pogba was really one of the players who looked really rejuvenated. It was almost at the beginning of a new season for him. And he scored a lot of goals, the majority of which were penalties. But he looked a lot better. He was getting assists, he was getting goals, he was performing well, he was defending, he was doing everything. But as soon as that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer deal was made permanent, Pogba went back to his old self. And I think it is similar to the way Eriksen does it with us. He just seems lazy. He doesn't want to do the defensive side of things. He tries to overcomplicate things. And I think if Pogba just kind of simplified what he was doing and just did the easy things, playing the passes across the midfield, rather than those trying to do these different roulettes, the step overs, trying to be fancy, I think he can be a much better player than what he is showing at the moment. So I do think he has that quality, but he's just not showing it enough, I suppose. Jay Spurs saying, Pogba or Eriksen, if you compare them, who would you take? Eriksen every day of the week. I think it's an easy decision, to be honest. Tottenham Till I Die saying, the Tottenham team at the old White Hart Lane was unbeatable, and that last season we remained unbeaten there. And I remember it was kind of the big talk went into the next season that if Tottenham had stayed at White Hart Lane, we could have potentially won the league, and I don't think that would have worked out that way with City winning it. But we were really unbeatable at that White Hart Lane, and that's what we need to bring into the new stadium. And it looked like we might do that last season, but then we lost the games there against Ajax, against West Ham, we drew with Everton. But if we can make that home stadium a fortress, top 4 is going to be easy every single season if we can get that home form, because we do seem to have the away form. I know last season we won 11 of our first 13 away games, and then we lost the last 6. And we would actually have joined the club record of most consecutive away defeats for Tottenham if we'd been beaten by City at the weekend, which would have been 7. We lasted that in 2000. But it has been a feature of Pochettino's time. We do seem to have really good away form. It's just away to the top 6 where we really seem to be kind of let down, and it's even at home to the top 6 at times as well. And I think that is where we are. That's kind of what we're missing to make that move into the next level. Spurs fan Todd saying, Matt, one right back and one left back from any teams in the Premier League. Who do you take and why? Well, if it's a choice of any fullback, well, I'll go with the realistic options first. Realistically, I would love to see Luca Digne from Everton come in. They signed him from Barcelona last summer, and he was an unbelievable addition for them. He was, I think, had the most assists of any defender and the most goals of any defender in the Premier League last season. But even aside from that, he's really solid defensively, and he's an all-round player. He's absolutely sensational. I'd love to see him at Tottenham. As for a right back, see again, there doesn't seem to be that many right backs around who just seem to be good enough. Like it's a really difficult position to make a name for yourself. And like sure, at the top six there are some really good players there. Obviously, Kyle Walker, João Cancelo, Wan-Bissaka, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Azpilicueta for Chelsea. But outside of the top six, I can't really think of anyone who would be worth bringing into the team. Like look, Matt Doherty at Wolves had a really good season last year, but is he at the level where he can make it into Tottenham? And I see Tottenham till I die saying Max Aarons. I think he's a really good prospect for the future, but in terms of getting in a player for now, I don't think he would be the best option. Who else is there? Everton, Seamus Coleman. I don't know. He's getting a bit old now. Like I can't imagine he would leave Everton. Leicester, they've Ricardo Pereira. I don't know if there is a right back at the moment I'd take from the Premier League, but I think it would be best to bring in a European one like Yusuf Attal or Elsie Toussaint if we were going to sign a right back. The Euro Guardian saying, what do you think of a midfield pivot of Ndombele and Celso with Lucas, Eriksen, Son and Kane in front of them? Now that would be a fantastic team. That really would be a team that could beat any team on its day, but I don't think Lo Celso has been brought in to play in that deeper role, and I don't think it's something that he would like to do. That would be a great team, but I don't think it is realistic for the season ahead. I think we will see Lo Celso more in the attacking role. But even if you swap around Lo Celso and Eriksen, because Eriksen has been known to play in that deeper position, I do think that's a really strong team. Jay Spurs saying, what do you think Kyle Walker-Peters' potential is? I think he can be one of the best right backs in the league if he does get the game time that he needs at Tottenham, which this season I don't think will happen. I think Foyt will probably be ahead of him in the pecking order, but obviously we won't see him be loaned out because of the situation we're in at right back at the moment with Serge Aurier, who could still potentially leave the club this summer. But look, Walker-Peters has a lot of potential, and he showed that against City. I think he really can he can play, and it's just a matter of getting that experience there, and just getting that first team football in and showing what he can do. Alexander saying on the right back question, surely Aaron Wan-Bissaka. If I could pick anyone, Wan-Bissaka would be up there, but I was saying in terms of a realistic option, Wan-Bissaka just isn't one of them because of course he's just joined United, and with that price tag on him as well, I don't think we will be signing him anytime soon, to be honest. But if I had to pick simply the best players in the league for left back and right back, I would kind of lean towards the Liverpool duo, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson. And look, I know they only have had one really, really good season, but they're ridiculous. They really are. I mean, Andy Robertson and like last season played for that left back role. I think actually both of them they both broke the previous record for most assists for a defender in a season. So it must have been Luca Digne, I must have got mistaken there. But they're incredible. They really are incredible. And I think they're a massive part of what Liverpool achieved last season. And I think that moment from Alexander-Arnold in the Champions League semi-final against Barcelona with that corner, it just shows what he's about. And I don't think that's something that you can be taught. I really think it is just sheer genius that he possesses. To have seen that and to have been able to pull it off is absolutely ridiculous. Tottenham to the die saying Foyt is just a mistake waiting to happen. Joshua Humphrey saying predicted lineup versus Newcastle. Look, to be honest, I don't really know what to expect anymore. I really don't, because I've kind of been waiting for that 4-2-3-1 to come back into play, and it just hasn't happened yet. So I really don't know what to expect. I hope we see Vertonghen back in the starting 11. I don't know if we will. I think it'll be Kyle Walker-Peters obviously in right back again. We'll see a bit more game time from Lo Celso. We'll see Son back, maybe not in the starting 11, but we definitely should see him at some point. But I really don't know what to expect from it, and I'm going to think about it. I'll obviously release my match preview this weekend, but I really don't know. I don't know what to expect from it. Now before I go on to the next game, Jay Spurs saying, when was the last time we had a good 90-minute performance? And it's been a while. It's really been a while. In the league towards the end of last season, I don't think there was anything. Obviously, that defeat to West Ham, the draw with Everton. We had that really bad run where we lost like Burnley, Southampton, Chelsea. The last one that I can 100% remember is probably that Champions League game against Borussia Dortmund. Of course, beat them 3-0 at Wembley. But aside from that, it's hard to think. But I don't think there's any team who does consistently perform well for 90 minutes. Every team is going to be, having their disappointing parts in games, and there's not going to be consistent performances ever. And you even see it from City, like last season losing to Leicester, losing to Palace. Who else did they lose to? Newcastle, and the couple of draws they had as well. You never see it from anyone, but it is certainly a worry that we haven't had a good 90-minute performance in a number of months. Paranormal Frank saying, why wouldn't you think Son won't start? Well, I suppose he's just back. He hasn't played since the end of last season. Obviously, I know he would have been in training all along, but he wouldn't be match fit at the moment because he hasn't played in so long. And I think it would be difficult to throw him right into the deep end. And I think maybe there are players there who deserve to start ahead of him because of what they've shown in the season already. Lamela certainly being one of them. Premier League preview and review saying you're a beast. Thanks, I appreciate that. Tottenham till I die. I think we will play a high line against Newcastle because they will put 11 men behind the ball, and that could be another reason why we won't see Son, because it's going to be really hard for him to utilise his pace against a team who are just going to be sitting behind the ball and hoping to soak up a 0-0 draw. But it will be really difficult, and that's where I think players like Christian Eriksen and Giovanni Lo Celso could be so much better for us because they have that ability to unlock a defence with one pass, and that's why we may see them. Spurs fan Todd saying, Matt, rate the new leaked third kit. Now I saw this. There's apparently a Spurs third kit that has been put on sale in Nike stores in the US, and it's a really retro kit. It's a kind of like a light blue kit with some weird design in the middle. It has like a collar and the button and stuff. I think it's a really nice kit. I don't know if it is going to be the kit. Obviously, it hasn't been officially released yet. But I really like it. I think it is a nice kit. And if that's it, I'll certainly be buying it. Paranormal Frank saying, but Son has a great shot outside the box. He does, and that's what did unlock Newcastle for us last season at Wembley when we played them. It was his last minute, or not last minute, I think 81st minute winner. A really clever turn at the edge of the box, getting onto his right foot, and a finish that Dubravka should have done better with. But he is the man who unlocked them for us last season. So look, you never know. Again, as I said, Pochettino is the man who knows this better. He's seeing what's happening in training. So we'll see what happens. Alex Cowan saying, get early goal against Newcastle, draw them out, then smash them 6-0. That would be a really good day out. So I suppose moving on to the next game now. The last team in the top six, second last, Chelsea against Leicester on Sunday. Delighted to see Chelsea drop points, I suppose. They started really, really well. They really got going early on in that game against Leicester. I think within 30 seconds they'd tested Schmeichel, they got in a corner or something. In the first 5 minutes, Leicester could not handle them at all. And Chelsea, they were really quick, they were sharp, they were closing down well, they were keeping the ball well, and it looked like potentially they could be a team who'd be worrying as a Tottenham fan this season. They got the goal. It was a disappointing mistake from Wilfred Ndidi. He kind of took too much time on the ball at the edge of the box, and Mason Mount caught him out, and it was a good finish from him. And Mason Mount, I think, is a player who could be really important to Chelsea this season. But Chelsea in that first half looked really, really good, and they would have been disappointed that they didn't have more goals going into half time. Pedro had a couple of chances as well. I think Giroud had one. Kante had a really good chance. They had the ball on the left hand side, and it was played to Giroud, who was kind of on the end line, and he really cleverly just flicked it back past the defender, and Kante was running in from the edge of the box, and it was a good block in the end from, I think it was Chilwell or Fuchs. It was Fuchs. But that second half, I think, really, really showed where Chelsea will let themselves down this season. And I know it was a lot to do with the fact they played 120 minutes midweek in Istanbul, but they were so lethargic, they were so sloppy in possession, and Leicester absolutely should have won that game. It was a great header from Ndidi that got him back into it, but James Maddison should have won it. I think Vardy had a really good chance as well. Chelsea were really lucky in the end to come out of that game with a point, and of course now yet to win their first game under Frank Lampard. I think it is obviously it's only a matter of time before they get it, but I think that'll be really worrying for them, that their first home game in the second half they were so sloppy, and I think they were really, really lucky to come out with a point. As for Leicester, encouraging, I would say. Not the greatest start, but it was a massive occasion for Chelsea. It was not just a football game for them. It's Frank Lampard, his homecoming. That kind of start was kind of what people were expecting, but encouraging for Leicester that they did manage to turn that game around, and they managed to stay in it when they were under the cosh so much. So I think Brendan Rodgers will take a lot of positives out of that. There's some really good performances in there with James Maddison. He did well. Wilfred Ndidi coming back from that early mistake, I think he did well as well. And Jose Perez and Yuri Tielemans both seem to be really settling into that team. And obviously Tielemans did have time with them last year, but for 2 new signings, they really look to be settling into that team. Premier League preview and review saying Leicester will finish above Chelsea. Shamir Jalani saying, how many points did you get in fantasy? It hasn't been the greatest start for me on fantasy football. Obviously, if you haven't already joined my fantasy football league, I'll leave a link in the description to that after I publish the video. Afterwards, the code is 8MTEKC if you want to check that out. I'm actually not signed in for fantasy football here for some reason, but yeah, it wasn't a great couple of weeks for me. I think I got something like 55 points in the first week, and it was less this week, so I may be using my free hit sometime soon. Thomas Gibbons saying, do you think Coutinho, I don't know what the second name is, and Perisic are good signings for Bayern, or do you think Dortmund will win the Bundesliga? I think Bayern will walk the Bundesliga. They absolutely will walk it, as they usually do. But I think the way they signed Coutinho now shows that it was, regardless of whether or not Coutinho pulled out of that deal, it was never going to happen for us, because he's now signed for Bayern Munich on a season-long loan with an option to buy for £110 million. So to Tottenham, never would have happened. But I think Bayern, I know they've lost James Rodriguez, Ian Robin and Frank Ribery, but they're an amazing team, and I think they will walk the Bundesliga again. Now, having said that, I watched Borussia Dortmund against Augsburg last Saturday, and they went 1-0 down at home to Augsburg after 30 seconds. They were levelled pretty quickly, and they went down and they beat them 5-1, and they look really, really dangerous. They certainly didn't miss Christian Pulisic. Jadon Sancho, absolutely sensational. A few other players, Paco Alcacer, unreal player as well. I think Dortmund will do well, but I just don't think they have it in them to challenge Bayern this season, simply because of the strength that Bayern do have. Jay Spurs saying, do you think Dyer and Wanyama are getting restricted with their growth as players? I think they're at the stage where they've grown as much as they ever will. I think they are players who will be leaving in the next season or two. I don't think that matters at all, really. John T. Arnold saying, Matt, who was your favourite Premiership era player? That's actually a really tough question, because there's a lot of players I've seen at Tottenham who I've really liked. So Luka Modric would have to be one of them, Rafael van der Vaart, Jermaine Defoe, obviously. But I might actually have to go with Kane, simply because of just the fact that he's Harry Kane, I suppose. He is one of the best players that has ever put on the Tottenham jersey, and obviously our top Premier League goal scorer, and it does feel like it's only a matter of time before he does really start moving up that list of top Tottenham goal scorers. So I'll probably have to go with him. Thomas Gibbons saying, Dortmund signed class players though, Torgan Hazard, Julian Brandt, Hummels and Schultz. They did make really good signings, to be fair, they did, and they will be better this season, but I think it's just Bayern all along in the German league, the way it is Juventus in Italy and PSG in France. I don't think that's under any threat this season. Hotspur Daily saying, seems like recently Dyer has been training to play at right back. I didn't know that at all, but obviously it is a position he has played in the past, mainly with Sporting Lisbon. He didn't do it much with us, although he has been asked to fit in there a few times. But I don't think he'd be the best option there, because he doesn't have much pace at all, and he does have the defensive side of things, but as well, having played in a defensive midfield role for us, he doesn't have the experience attacking. He's only scored 1 or 2 goals for us. I personally wouldn't be happy with that, but I think maybe it would be an idea to kind of try out a few new players there, because it's certainly our weakest position going into the season ahead. But I personally wouldn't pick Eric Dyer's playing right back. Now, just quickly moving on to the next game, Southampton and Liverpool. Look, it was not the best game from Liverpool, not the best performance, but they got the win. They got the win in the end. That's kind of what we saw a lot from them in the last season. It was a fantastic goal from Sadio Mane that put them ahead. It was, I think, cutting in off the left hand side. He just curled it into the far corner. It was a really, really good goal from him. And I suppose in that moment, playing against a team like Southampton, it kind of felt like they were going to just really push on and get a comfortable victory. But I think they were lucky that they weren't able to give Southampton that kind of push at the start, that boost by starting Andy Lonergan in goal. It was Adrian who managed to get into the starting 11, but if Lonergan had been there, I think we would have seen a very, very different game. Bobby Firmino in the end got the second goal, but he missed a whole lot of chances before it, and again, that is something that Liverpool kind of showed towards the end of last season, where they're just not as clinical in taking their chances as their goal scoring records might show, and that is something that could come back to haunt them this season. And then as for the mistake Adrian made, I think Alisson is out for another 4 to 6 weeks. They could be in a bad position with Adrian playing in goal, because the goal that Adrian conceded, it was such a simple error to make. He just had the ball at his feet, and Ings was closing him down. I don't know if he tried to clear it or if he tried to pass it, but he just hit it straight off Danny Ings. There didn't even seem like there's any attempt to get it around him. It's like he didn't even realise he was there. He kind of went for it and hit off Ings and went in. And for confidence, that'll be really, really damaging for Adrian after that big boost of winning the Super Cup for them in the week. That would really push him back a bit, and hopefully it does affect them going into the rest of their time without Alisson. Now this Saturday they do have Frank, I promise you it's workers next door. For Liverpool going into the game against Arsenal this weekend, it's going to be a really interesting game, and I think we will see hopefully a draw. Hopefully it will be a case where they both drop points, and it will give us a boost, probably winning the game against Newcastle next week. I think we will be delighted to see that happen. I don't know if it will. I mean, at Anfield, Arsenal don't have a great record. I think 2 of the last 3 or 4 seasons there, they've conceded 4, and really, really been bad. And see Frank saying, keep at it, Matt, you'll be big, don't forget your first. I really appreciate that, Frank, and I promise you I won't. But yeah, I think we will see a good result for us on Saturday between Liverpool and Arsenal. Spurs fan Todd saying, Matt, do you ever get down to the stadium? Have you been to the new ground? I haven't been lucky enough to get into the new stadium yet. I've been there a few times. I went to a few games at Wembley. I think Palace in that first season. I got down to the new ground, and I was there in February for the Leicester and Dortmund games at Wembley. So I managed to get down to the new stadium as well, but I haven't been able to get in there yet. I was at White Hart Lane a good few times as well, but I am going for a tour there in the new stadium in October, I think. So I'll definitely have a video out about that. But I haven't been in there yet, but I'm really, really looking forward to it. I won't get to a game this time, but I'm hoping to get to one before the end of the season. Hotspur Daily saying a draw between Liverpool and Arsenal would be best for us, which it absolutely would be. Now, just going into the last 2 games before I end the stream here. Brighton against West Ham and Everton against Watford. Brighton, a fantastic start to the season. For me, in my Premier League predictions, I had them to go down. With Graham Potter coming in, I wasn't expecting anything special from them, but they've had a really, really good start. 2 of those teams you kind of take as some of the best of the rest. They beat Watford 3-0 last week at the Vicarage Road, and now they've drawn with West Ham. I think it's a really good start to the season for Brighton, and their new signings are really looking good. Leandro Trossard scored for them against West Ham. Neil Maupay really should have scored. He was unlucky not to, but I think Brighton, I think they could stay up this season. I didn't see that at all at the start of the season, but they could be good this year. And Everton against Watford, one of those games that you're not really going to pay much attention to. Everton beating Watford 1-0. And I actually can't even remember who scored the goal for them. Everton-Watford. It was Bernard who scored the goal for them after 10 minutes. I don't even remember it. It was one of those games that, just 2 mid-table teams. It's not going to mean much at the end of the season, but look, it's a game nonetheless. Now, before I go, I just want to remind you that I'm going to be doing these Premier League streams on my channel for the next few weeks, but I'm going to push them over to my Premier League channel after that. I'll leave a link to that in the description after I publish this video when I end the stream. Also, my Facebook group, Fantasy Football, you know it all. Please don't forget to join them if you haven't already. If you did enjoy the stream, please give it a big thumbs up. We're only on 10 likes at the moment. I'd love to get that higher. And if you haven't already subscribed, I do these interactive live streams, but I also do Premier League match reviews, previews, and loads of different things on the channel. So if you do want that content, please don't forget to subscribe. And I do have a really big video coming out in the next week or 2. It's a collaboration with a load of Tottenham creators. There's some ones I'm really, really excited about. 2 of the biggest Tottenham YouTubers are going to be in the video, so I'm really excited about that. So if you do want to see that video, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell so you know when that's out. Josh Humphrey's big video. I'm really excited about it. I'll be letting you know who's in it pretty soon. I just need to kind of finalise a few things. But that's it for this stream. Thank you very much for watching, to everyone who has watched, and I'll see you soon.